Hey, what's up, guys? Aarava here, and welcome back to the Pitlane Podcast, episode number 121 today, to review the British Grand Prix, and what a great one it was. Obviously, the instant race reaction was a very positive one from myself, Callum, and Tom, and we're back here, your usual host, to talk about that. We'll go team by team. Obviously, you can get our first initial thoughts if you go and watch back that race reaction, but we'll start off with Mercedes, Bottas, and Hamilton. Obviously, Hamilton winning his 6th British Grand Prix. Now in total, and we talked a little bit about how great of achievement that was, and I think this season is going to wrap into basically just a Hamilton fest. Actually, after all the talk of Bottas 2.0, I honestly think that for the rest of the season, I mean, there might be one or two occasions where Bottas comes into play again, but I think it's one of those years where Hamilton's just absolutely on it, and you see people like Vettel just not on it. So it's going to be a bit of a downward trend in terms of the actual top championship fight being that great.
Yeah, I mean, he's got his head screwed on at the moment,
Yes.
which is exactly how you win championship these days. I think we've started to realise that it's not out-and-out raw pace and speed and racecraft that you need. You also need to be switched on, which is how Rosberg was praised so well when he won his championship. You do need to be quite wary of that sort of stuff, and he's got every element nailed at the moment. And the only thing that even when in qualifying, he made that small mistake in Brooklands, ruining his first lap and losing out by 0.006 of a second. He was still beating himself up, and it does surprise me about Hamilton, because he literally said in an interview, second's good, like third is good. It's good to be at the front of the grid, but the way he's hardwired, he beat himself up about only finishing second in qualifying, not performing in front of his home crowd. But he went out there, and with the strategy that played out for him, and his optimism, and the way he just channels the energy from, I don't know where he gets the energy from, but you can see we're pretty much halfway through the season now.
Osmosis through the air from the crowd.
Yeah, clearly, yeah, he's channeling it some way. Yeah. But with all this, there's just so much good energy surrounding Hamilton as we go into this midpoint of the season.
Yeah, Silverstone was. Every year now, I feel like every year it gets stronger and stronger, but the connection is like, it just gets stronger between the fans and Lewis. It was like, I think the attendance this year was like 350k. It was mad. Like, it's incredible. 140,000 on race day alone. And I think he just really feeds off that, I think, ultimately. So I think especially when I wouldn't say they stacked the deck against him, but, going up to the weekend, there was the whole thing of like, is he really British because he lives in Monaco, la 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 la, that kind of thing again, where they bring up those kind of weird reports and try to put like a dark cloud over things. I think that just fuels him to want to do better. I think there was an element of that, of like, because they question his Britishness, the way I feel like he carried the flag with a bit more extra pride and like extra kind of like sticking his chest out more than usual. So yeah, overall he was untouchable. When Hamilton's in this form, it's bad news for everybody. Bad news.
Yeah, very bad news. And ultimately, I mean, we saw that pace at the end on the worn hard tyres to get the fast up the Grand Prix. There's no questioning he's in fine form. But we were talking earlier about just sort of like, what others kind of, we mentioned in the race reaction about the whole luck thing of Bottas obviously pitting right before the safety car, and the safety car comes out, and you just can't obviously picture when a safety car is going to come out, apart from maybe Singapore. You maybe try and allocate it into your strategy for fuel, but other than that, you kind of go, okay, it might come, it might not. But there was an interesting article talking about Hamilton was always going to do a one stop, because he saw the pace on Friday and it looked really good on the long runs. And so he had a plan of, at the start of the race, he would run Bottas really, really hard, which he did, because they went and tussled. They had that, really lovely battle where Bottas actually put up a fight, surprisingly, probably to his detriment, because he then took out a bit too much, maybe out of his tyres at the very start of that stint, whereas Lewis maybe did not. He was able to. Hamilton's always had this thing of actually, being able to attack but not shred his tyres completely, whereas other drivers kind of had that in the past. And the whole article kind of went on about talking about having this aggressive strategy at the start, making Bottas pit early, or earlier than maybe wanted to, and then he continued on because he was always going to try and do a one stop, and lo and behold, the safety car came out, and so it just kind of re-backed up his one stop. But it seemed like he was always going to do a one stop by going long on mediums and go to a set of hard tyres. And you know what? Most of the time, I don't really buy into all these, conspiracies or, like articles where it suggests stuff like this just based off data. But I could see it. I can agree with it because he did run Bottas very hard, and then he just did go on, and he did kind of go on a lot longer than anyone else really at the very front at least, barring Vettel, but kind of that's a kind of different point. So and I wouldn't put it past Hamilton in this kind of form he's in to think that switched on about, you know what, I'm looking at the data, and I think I can do a one stop. Screw the engineers. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to run my own race by myself in private. And they'll react to what I'm doing basically on race day.
I mean, on the face of it sounds quite bad going against your team, but you look at the likes of Ferrari, who I want to have a little rant about Ferrari and Leclerc and certain strategy calls later, but you see the scenarios happen where the team gets it wrong, and sometimes the driver sits there and goes, "Hold on a minute." And I think Hamilton would have been kicking himself if he did do a two-stop and just ended up behind Bottas without even trying the one-stop against his own teammate, which is obviously then called into question. Mercedes were like, okay, we don't want to subconsciously give someone the upper hand, which is quite difficult when you've got Hamilton, who, let's be honest, is in the form of his life. You will do anything to please him. You will want to keep him at your team. So I think Mercedes do probably subconsciously give him the upper hand sometimes. But then you can look at it on the opposite side. It's a safety car. You can't predict a safety car. They didn't predict Giovinazzi going off, and if he did stay out, he was going to be behind him. And the only chance that Hamilton would have had in the second half of the race was to actually just overtake him on track, which might have been a lot harder with lesser fuel, shorter braking distances. It is just generally get quite harder as the race goes on, depending on then tyre wear. But it does go to show, like Aarav, you're saying, that he's just hardwired to win at the moment. And that's why, as Tom says, it's scary. Like, it's scary to go up against someone like this at the moment who's hardwired to win and will do anything, not even malicious. It's not even that malicious anymore. And if it was against Rosberg, then you would have heard about it end on end.
Probably,
the media would be going on and on and on and on about. But just because Bottas doesn't kick up a fuss about it, I think Bottas is very much... He wants to beat Hamilton fair and square, and he doesn't want to do the whole strategy debacle. But the problem is, Formula One is all about the strategy debacle.
But this was like, this is like not even like a strategy. Like, it's a strategy play, but it's like because he did it. Maybe if it is true that he basically did this on purpose, that it's not even like a team strategy play. He's taking matters into his own hands of like, I know I can take these tyres long enough. By pushing hard and still keeping them in check, and then I know I can take the hard tyres in check. So it's pretty much just like, just forcing Bottas's hand of like, okay, mate, do you want to keep the lead? So you've got to push now.
It's like a game of poker.
Yeah, and it's in Bottas's hands then, like, okay, do I let him through and protect my tyres, or do I wear out my tyres and I have to pit earlier than him? And then, let's forget about the safety car in all this, pit earlier, and therefore I have to do a two-stop, and this guy's just going to mug me off then and do a one-stop, So in that kind of way, it's quite, it is going against the team maybe, if it is what the team wanted, a two-stop. But, sometimes the team can want to play fair, and your driver can just be like, I've got other ideas though. I want to do my own thing here. I know you're the team, but... it's hard. You can't force two drivers onto the same strategy just because it's fair. Because if one driver thinks they can do something else, I feel like they should be able to do that. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, I think yes and no. It's like, again, this whole thing's like I agree, but I disagree in the sense that we will never know. I don't think Bottas has ever been asked, like, maybe could he have done the one stop? Did he just do what the team told him to? Because, again, we won't know. We will never know.
Yeah.
Maybe Valtteri could have gone for the one and done that as well. But like Kyle said, just because he's like more of a team player and he just wants to do it the nice way and kind of not kick up a fuss, he done what the team said. But again, we will never know. So, it's just speculation really at this point.
It's interesting. I like it. I like it. It's quite clever because it adds a different element to Formula One, which sometimes you don't see all the time. Is not only the battle between two drivers, but the battle between the driver and his team. And when you look at, as I say earlier, when you look at other drivers being constantly screwed over by pit strategy, and as you say, Tom, I mean, he's just following what the team's saying. Maybe because he just hasn't got the experience to then take matters into his own hands. This is the 12th season, 13th season for Lewis. He knows what he wants sometimes, and he's been...
let's just say next time this situation comes around, we'll see what happens.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a
Very interesting.
It's a bit of a unique situation to recreate.
But it's nice to see a little bit being stirred up at Mercedes, because as
bit,
much as the on-track battle was brilliant, and I can't stop watching back the race highlights of the British Grand Prix generally, it's getting quite stale over there in Team Mercedes.
Well, no,
the moment Rosberg left...
I can't remember who it was. Someone on my timeline was like, it's actually quite funny that with all this talk of on-track battles of Ferrari v Red Bull, McLaren v Renault, actually Mercedes is becoming very irrelevant as of late. During the races, it's really dull to look at them and just like,
you don't see them.
No one cares about it. Yeah, sure, fine, you're winning the race and got a 1-2, yeah, cool, that's great. Let's watch P3 and P4. And so it's like, they're winning the races, and yet it's a double-edged sword of like, you're winning them too well, so it's boring and no one wants to show you on camera because the other fights are better, and you're becoming irrelevant in terms of the actual topic of F1. Like, when I think about the British GP, I honestly, if I had to describe the British GP to someone who didn't know a lot about F1, I'd be like, yeah, it was a great scrap between Ferrari and Red Bull, basically. I wouldn't say anything about Mercedes because actually they're very irrelevant to that entire race in terms of what action there was. So
yeah, it ties into my tweet. It's just a shame, like that whole Ferrari versus Red Bull battle. If you just take away the Mercedes, that would have been the battle for the win. That would have been insane.
Yeah, it would have been the battle
scary
for
thing.
The whole podium.
Let me throw this into debate. The scary thing is Mercedes probably won't drop off the pace until Lewis Hamilton retires.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, I don't see it. Yeah,
I've already accepted it. He's going to win 7 titles come this season and the next one.
Yeah,
it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Inevitable.
I don't want to wish the next season and a half away, but you do look at it. Or it really depends on how long Hamilton wants to stay about, but just the way the setup is at Mercedes at the moment, like, you can't fault them at all.
No,
they do.
The more it feels like they're inevitably compromising on 2021 regs, the more I'm starting to think he could continue going into the next era, whatever that may be. Because
I mean, that setup's bulletproof, basically. As long as, and also the thing is, now that they had the whole Rosberg thing, I think Mercedes are now almost like they got too burned from what happened that year to ever let another driver in alongside Hamilton that's going to push his buttons. So I don't think we'll ever see that again, and therefore we'll never see a Hamilton that's off form again. I think he's going to be on form now.
But I think the thing is, without Rosberg, we'd have never have had the Hamilton that we've got now. Yes,
in many ways, yeah. I mean, in many ways, I think he that really fired him up.
Yeah, that not only fired him up, but matured him.
Yeah.
Which is very good topic of conversation regarding this whole week, where everyone apparently doesn't want to support Sebastian Vettel anymore because he's not mature, and then everyone's attacking Hamilton because of this, that and the other. But the maturity that he gained in that era of the early turbo hybrid era then has pushed him into this unstoppability at the moment. And it's brilliant to watch, but you look at it, and I mean, obviously you've got your boring races, like you've got your Paul Ricard, you've got
except for Bahrain, Silverstone, and Austria.
Pretty much, yeah. But then you've got your good races, but you go, how much better could they have been?
Yeah.
They could have been so much better. That battle between Leclerc and Verstappen could have been for P1. Could have been.
Yeah.
I really think Lewis's strengths and why he's so strong now boils down to not necessarily what happens in F1 or what's happened over the last 5 years. I think it's also what he does outside of F1, which
he's got a clear mind.
Makes him so mentally in control, and just like he's on top of the world. Everything he does outside of F1 is like it's out there, it's different, and that's him.
He does fashion. It's got nothing to do with
that
F1.
just suits him, So he's at like a mental peak. Like I've never seen him like just.
Yeah, no. This is
Canada mistake-wise, he doesn't do any mistakes. He hasn't crashed in ages. To be fair, he hasn't really kicked up a fuss on many controversial statements recently. Since when he had a jibe at Rosberg retiring, saying he didn't want to come back and fight me, kind of thing. Since then, there's been nothing. So
yeah,
nothing but respect from the whole of the grid.
An athlete at the very peak of his career.
Yeah, it's brilliant to watch, don't get me wrong, and I love to watch it as a fan of him, but you look at the general state of F1, and it's quite ironic coming out off the back of this race, because you go, it was such a good race, it's probably one of the best races we've had in a very, very, very long time.
I mean, to be honest, you take that race... you take that race, all you need to do is try and slam the grid closer together, basically.
Oh yeah, fully.
You know, that's really the only case. That's the really only
You
issue
knew
here.
that Silverstone's actually one of the best overtaking circuits on the calendar these days.
Yeah.
And I do think it's because the cars have got faster, really, because you can follow closely, because they're flat out for the likes of Cops.
It was a banging race last year as well. Not just
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was a good race last.
Ironically, the one time we went to Silverstone, it was awful.
Yeah, that's because the gap was still too big, I think, between Mercedes
Ferrari and Merc. Yeah.
and Red Bull weren't quite there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, talking about Ferrari though, I mean, Cal, you mentioned you want to go on a little rant about their strategy decisions because sometimes they are a bit too stubborn with their strategies in terms of not being fluid enough of like, oh, let's do something different.
I don't get their philosophy at the moment because there's a big thing going around at the moment, and if you're living under a rock and you don't have like any F1 Twitter connection, there was a big debacle about the fact that Vettel has kind of lost the game now and he's kind of slipping back to his old ways, and people pointing back to the fact that he doesn't have any racecraft because of the Red Bull era and this, that and the other, and this whole dark cloud forming over Vettel and Ferrari, but it feels like that cloud is creeping over to Leclerc's side as well. So there was the strategy decision where they just left Leclerc out for an extra lap during the safety car period. Not entirely sure why. I mean, you've got Red Bull and Mercedes are so switched on when it comes to strategy decisions. I think those two teams are the best two teams on the grid when it comes to strategic decisions, without a doubt. They can make a call. They're so far planned ahead. Like, obviously they can make mistakes. Both teams do make mistakes. Red Bull, obviously they've sent their pit crew out with no tyres. You've had Mercedes fully screwing over Hamilton back in Austria, for example. They do make mistakes, but when they're switched on, they've got so many different scenarios planned out that obviously Red Bull, they did that double stop with Verstappen to get him on fresher tyres and to get him on the hard tyres. And then they just kind of went, and then they got so excited over Vettel, bringing him in. They was like, oh my God, we've gained 2 positions or 3 positions. But hold on, we've got another car out there, and we could have pit him the exact same lap because he was quite far behind, and we could have put him on fresher tyres for the rest of the Grand Prix.
Ferrari,
it's just so bizarre.
Ferrari can't manage 2 drivers correctly ever. They just can't.
They need 2 separate strategists.
They need what Merc have right now. They need a Hamilton and a Bottas, but right now they don't. They have a Vettel and Leclerc, which are 2 pretty good drivers. So,
which is what many people argued in the first place, that Raikkonen he should have stayed because
he was perfect for Ferrari.
It made the dynamic work, and in many ways, to this day, I still agree. Leclerc's a fantastic driver, of course, and I'm not saying he shouldn't be in a Ferrari, but it just feels a bit early. Like, not because he's not ready or anything, but because last year was the closest Ferrari I've ever got, and it just felt like the last thing you want to do is kind of really turn everything upside down. And, you know, they got rid of Bene, they got rid of Raikkonen, they went on a complete different design philosophy on the car, when I feel like they didn't really need to. So, it's weird. Like, Austria, again, bad pit stop for Vettel. We saw that they weren't ready for him. And then we've just seen so many bad strategies this season alone. It's just like...
It's tough.
It's
I mean,
normal. It's just
maybe
normal.
They weren't ready. I think Leclerc was ready, though. Like it would have been a travesty not to have him in a top car this year, because he is ready, clearly.
Throw this into it. Leclerc was ready for Ferrari. Ferrari were not ready for Leclerc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In terms of that management,
It's tricky.
In terms of the management side, of Ferrari, like wasn't ready to have Leclerc come in, because there's I think me and Tom touched upon this, agreed on the same point in terms of like a lot of the whole Vettel going off form and stuff. I don't think it has to do with Leclerc at all. I think it's more of a him thing that we mentioned in the race reaction. But on top of that, the team's management above the drivers, they I don't think they were ready to have like 2 kind of on it drivers where they have to focus on both at the same time. Whereas, obviously they had the luxury of like, oh, is Kimi still in this race? Oh, okay, let's pit him now.
Yeah, but there's also a scenario where I was reading about the fact that it's not, because everyone points to Hockenheim last year where Vettel has dropped the ball, and statistically, yes, but I think since the death of Sergio Marchionne, I think that's where he's not recovered from that a little bit. I think the team was hurting so much and he was hurting so much from that he's never really cleared his mind since. And obviously Canada didn't help. Canada would have been a huge help to get him out of
that could have been
this slump.
different story.
But like even you think this season, like you look at Silverstone, you look at Bahrain, he spanned, didn't he, when Hamilton passed him?
Yep.
All by himself,
Yeah.
and he had to pit because of that. I think.
Bahrain, yeah, he did because his front wing broke.
Yeah.
But Bahrain though, that kind of ties into a couple of like reports coming out in the last few days. Obviously, like why was Vettel so far off the pace at Silverstone, and it just ties into the fact that this car just doesn't suit him. Basically, the SF90, as we saw in preseason, is a very stable car, but it's not quick. So in order to make it quick, you have to make it unstable. And it doesn't suit Vettel's style because Sebastian traditionally likes a stable rear end from directly from his mouth. And he
knows
does
that
not
from the
oversteer.
Red
He
Bull
likes
era.
a point. Yeah, you can.
Which
You
kind
know
of
the
red-
car.
I mean, there was a
sense.
reason why he was untouchable in the blown diffuser era because the stable rear end was pretty much the definition of pressing the
Red
throttle
Bull.
middle of the corner to get extra
Yeah.
downforce.
And that's why it kind of ties into like having seen these quotes, and then you look at the Bahrain spin, for example, it kind of adds up in a way. You know, like he doesn't have that confidence with the rear end of his car to really push it, and in order to go fast, you have to be more uncomfortable because ultimately the problem with the Ferrari is the front end doesn't bite into the tarmac enough. So by making the front end bite in more, you're making the rear end far less unstable.
Yeah.
Sorry, far more unstable.
Yeah.
So and it's kind of a catch-22. Do you go for stability but less pace, or do you try and push
Yeah.
the boat and try and be as uncomfortable as you can without having too
It was
many
very
issues?
much Jenson Button's Achilles heel, really. It was very similar
It always
sort of
was,
thing.
yeah.
And you look at I for some reason I always remember back to his pole lap in 2010 of Vettel's. It was that I remember it was second race of the season. He was absolutely on it, and that car was on rails. Like it literally, I remember the common term was the Red Bull was on rails, because that's what it looked like. And the nose on that car would literally bite in. It would throw itself in, and you do look on board with. I think even generally, I don't think like this era of car, the heavier. The tyres, the heavier car.
They're very grippy, but the heaviness I think takes away from how on rails they look.
If anything, it's made the cars more technical at lower speed, which
for sure.
I think has obviously favoured. But obviously, then again, you look back in the day, and you can use Hamilton as an example. He very much matched Alonso's driving style, where he'd just throw it in, absolutely throw it in, deal with the rear end on the exit, but absolutely throw it in. And Hamilton had to change his driving style for that, because obviously as he came on, he was eating up his Pirelli tyres when they came along in 2011. And then obviously as the cars got heavier, the tyres got more sensitive to heat. He has tuned his driving style to the point where, and this is what I mean, that's why he's so unstoppable, because he's managed to not only get used to all these cars and become so much more mature and doesn't crash in it at all pretty much, but he's altered his driving style. And I don't think Vettel has fully switched his driving style to these hybrid cars yet.
It's hard. It's not easy to adapt.
Oh no, not at all.
It's like, for example, and that it's also a catch-22 because it makes it look worse for him, the fact that the SF90 suits Leclerc more, because if you remember last season at Sauber, he was used to having like an oversteery car from F2. He liked a sharp rear that was active and a nice front that would just go into the corner. And then he got to Sauber, and he was like, okay, I need to actually learn to drive with understeer. And it took him, until Spain. Baku was 6th place, but that was more down to just the chaotic race.
Yeah.
It took him to that Spain to Canada region. And I think his first Q3 came in France, which was like round 8.
Yeah.
It took him to that point where he started to understand how the more understeery nature of the car worked and how to adjust his setups in base of that. And now, obviously, with this car, he can go back to what he liked with the oversteeriness in a way, and that actually suits the Ferrari in terms of how you can get more out of it. So it's just the way it is. I think ultimately, I think people will say one thing, especially if they're not Vettel's biggest fan. I'm definitely not his biggest fan. I was one of those that if I did go to a race in 2013, I probably would have booed him on the podium when I was back then because I was immature. In hindsight, it was terrible. I was one of those people. But at the same time, I don't like we said about before. It's not. I really don't think Vettel's issues have anything to do with Leclerc. I just think the guy is battling his own demons
Yeah,
and
his
has
own
his own
psychological
issues.
demons, and then like
Yeah,
you
and
say,
also just the fact he just
car.
it doesn't enjoy the car.
Yeah,
you know, it's
I mean, you can have that. I
combination
mean, take like what was it when the McLaren was horrendous in '09? I mean, Hamilton absolutely hated that McLaren, that absolute dog.
Yeah. Some of the quotes on the radio still ring bells.
Yeah, and same thing with 20. I mean, bring up McLaren again. 2013 McLaren, that car was an absolute dog.
Yep.
You do have sometimes dog cars where you just don't get used to it, and obviously Leclerc's making the most of it. But like you said, Tom, it's probably only because the dogginess of it kind of favours his driving, kind of preferred driving style in a way. Whereas it does not with Vettel, and obviously Vettel, you know, he's the leader of the team, so it's kind of, you know, unfortunate that for him the car's gone away from him, because usually the team leader is the one who can try and shape the car around himself. But obviously Ferrari tried something very different this year, and
there's so many things that don't make sense. Like even I read like 6 months ago, they even, you know, when they changed mechanics in garages, Vettel's got Raikkonen's mechanics from last year.
Right. Okay.
So it's like, again, that changed as well. Who makes that call? You know, there's lots of things that are like...
And that kind of change does matter, because back in 2016, Hamilton was adamant that change was quite a big deal for him versus Rosberg. So
yeah, I was going to bring that up about...
It's not a light
when
decision.
they did that at Mercedes, I don't understand fully why they do that. I know it's to separate the fact that, like, obviously each side of the garage now becomes on one side of the... Like, they take sides, basically.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, regarding just the whole Ferrari situation, like, it's difficult. But then you look at the drivers' standings. Sebastian Vettel is 104 race wins behind Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
That's mental. That's weird.
It's been a weird season because Leclerc should have 2 wins and Vettel should have 1. You know, it just hasn't worked out. You know, in a normal situation, Bahrain should have been a 1-2 for Ferrari.
Oh, definitely.
Minimum win for Leclerc. And, you know, Austria as well, I think if they just pit Leclerc 6 laps later, so he's got fresher tyres for the end, which could have easily been the case, he wins Austria. Yeah. And a bit more like Vettel could have got 3rd and got on the podium in that race. You know, I think it's just been a really... too many mistakes again for Ferrari this year. I mean, we say it every year, but this year's been really bad. You know, like other years, it was kind of in the heat of the championship moment towards the end of the season when pressure's on. But this is literally no pressure.
But also at the same time, I've got to say, I'm not horrendously sure. I mean, I am surprised after the whole pre-season thing. But if we think about the pattern of Ferrari that we talked about many times before, this was meant to be their bad year. Like, they do always have good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. Last year was their good year. 2017 was good, but you could consider it bad because the way it dive bombed at the second half. 2016 was bad. 2015 was good. So they do have that kind of checkerboard of like one good year, maybe 2 bad years, or 1 bad year, then another good year. But they never kind of have 2 good years in a row, ever.
I mean, 2017 and 2018 relatively were okay.
Relatively, yeah.
I expected last year to be their bad year, and it was looking bad for the first couple of races. Like everyone thought they were like the 3rd best team until they kind of turned it around. But for me, apologies for the dog barking if anyone hears this on audio, but
we can definitely
I can't do anything about it. It's over the road. So I think it's just a weird season for Ferrari, and it's especially with Vettel because it's like. It's not even like he's completely gone, because at Canada, like his qualifying lap was one of the best laps of the season. Like there was that moment where I remember, like, I think me and everyone else, like, we saw that lap and it was like, oh yeah, I forgot what this guy can really do. Like genuinely, like it's been so long.
Again, that's when maybe the car's completely hooked up the way he wants it.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's scary though. We're starting to forget who Sebastian Vettel is. In a way.
If Vettel had won Canada, it'd be a different conversation.
Fully, it would be.
And he did win. He crossed that first, but
I don't know, but it's just there's something not right upstairs for him at the moment. He's not settling right, and it is scary to see because there's been so many people shitting on him on social media that it's like, no, I don't want Sebastian Vettel, a 4-time world champion, to just go off into the dust like that. I want him to be battling with Leclerc, Verstappen, Hamilton, Bottas. I think it's exciting, and hopefully he does start to pick up. If anything, he needs, like everyone, he just needs to not look at any sort of media outlet. Needs to get no feedback from anyone.
I don't think he does.
Focus on himself. He doesn't anyway. But he'll be sat in a press conference and he'll go,
Yeah, the only kind of
been bad recently.
thing he gets from the media or what, like, for all like online world is what the journalists ask him. So, he does a good job, I guess, for him. Like, I guess he'd probably be even worse if he did have some sort of social media. But he's not on social media. Like I touched upon, like in the race reaction, the short one, like I almost feel like maybe over the summer break, just needs to maybe go and try and find some help of like maybe mentally, maybe he's got a mental block or something, or like I said, sportsmen get yips sometimes, and I feel like he's in the middle of one.
There's an element of he needs to admit to himself that it's not quite right at the minute.
Yeah.
I think maybe he has. Again, we don't know him. He's not. We don't know anything about his private life, but there's a part of like it doesn't feel like he wants to admit to himself that it's been a bad time. In a way, I understand that, because in many ways, by admitting that to yourself, that you might plant that seed of doubt in your head forever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and this is F1 drivers who never ever doubt themselves.
Yeah, that's why it's such a delicate thing, and it's not something you can just like click your fingers.
Yeah, the moment you start doubting your ability, you retire. Or the moment you start doubting if you're enjoying the sport, you retire. That's what happened to Alonso. That's what's happened to Button. Same with Massa. Like they bow out when they think it's right. But Vettel's only 32. He's only 32.
It's incredible.
If you put this into perspective, he's only 2 years older than Daniel Ricciardo, which I find a bit wild anyway.
Yeah,
so
that's wild.
You don't want Daniel Ricciardo to be going definitely don't want Daniel Ricciardo to be going in 2 years' time. So you don't want Vettel to be going now. He's in the middle
of his career. He's in the middle of it basically right now.
Exactly, and he has got the ability, just like Hamilton, to be going until his late 30s, just like what Kimi Räikkönen and Massa was doing. So. Find out next week on Jeremy Ferrari show.
Yeah, I mean it's just a Ferrari. It's like Ferrari's just a very unstable place to be. It just throws up a lot of rockiness, and I think that's part of it.
I know, but I love that. But the only good thing about it is Leclerc is bossing it on track with some of the battling he's been doing recently, and he's still getting that name out there. And the battle between Ferrari and Red Bull in general is immense.
Yeah,
it's becoming the battle of the season now, because it does feel like Red Bull always upgrade too late, like the last 5 races, but it feels like they've got their act together and they've
got it mid-season, and I like this new Red Bull. I'm enjoying it.
I'd put them down to challenge for podium every race now.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah. It was surprising that they didn't. They really should have got a podium.
Especially Gasly now turning up as well.
Yeah,
you have to put them down.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we talked a lot about the top 3 teams. Shall we try and go through? I don't know how long we've been running here for about. I don't know, like, oh Jesus, this might be a bit of a hefty podcast to be honest.
Yeah, this one dragged.
But let's go through some other people. We got McLaren. Obviously, we actually touched upon McLaren quite a lot in the reaction there, with Sainz doing a good job in P6. Norris, unfortunate P11. That fight, that dynamic between McLaren and Renault now is very much kind of like we said, they're kind of getting away from the rest of the midfield, both those two teams, and they're kind of having their own little scrap for P4 and 5.
We said it's good because it's like...
Yeah, very good.
Don't get me wrong, we want to see privateers and not so big names fight at the front, but at the same time, you want those manufacturers at the sharp end, because they're the giants, they're the heavy hitters, and also just McLaren and Renault. Once upon a time, they were in 2005, for example. It was those 2 teams for the championship, and now they're nowhere near it. So it's good to see the progression from both of them. And also, I will say with McLaren as well, it's funny how a year changes. Literally last year, it felt like they had the same people in charge as like Ferrari, making the wrong decisions and just doing stupid things. And that's what changed this year. Literally, they get everything right. I mean, they got a shot like Norris and stuff can happen, but that's just bad luck, not a bad call.
Yeah.
But they get stuff right, like with Sainz, with Austria, the strategy. They just make no mistakes. And that's,
the thing is, as well,
they've benefited.
I thought the move, I'll put my hand up, I thought the move for Sainz to go to McLaren was a bad one. I genuinely did think it was a bad one, just with the way that there was no signs of McLaren of them moving forward. And Sainz is in the prime of his career at the moment. He's driving so good, because the last 2 races he's come from outside the top 10 to power into the top 10, and comfortably as well, with the amount of points he's picked up recently. I mean, just bearing in mind, Sainz is on 38 points, Gasly's on 55.
Yeah, he's doing amazing.
So, and Sainz is winning the best of the rest championship at the moment, and by a solid How many points is that? That's 8 points.
Which is a lot for them because you only get like a 2-point spin from like 8th to 6th or 6th. Sorry, 6th to 8th or 6th.
I lie. It was 13 points. I can't do maths.
Oh wow, okay.
I was thinking
13 points
because I remember Raikkonen was on like 22 or something like that. So
Raikkonen's on 25. He's on
25
28.
now. Yeah.
I haven't done. It's been a long summer, but you know he's bossing it. And the fact is as well is he's in the prime point of his career when young Lando Norris has come in, who's brilliant anyway. But science is reflecting onto Norris. Those two are getting along brilliantly. There's such a good positive vibe. You see a whole grandstand in orange, and it's not for Max Verstappen, which I thought was brilliant. All dressed up in McLaren gear. I mean, when was the last time that Silverstone was lit up with a bit of McLaren gear? That's throwing it back to the Vodafone caps.
They've always had silver, so it's hard to tell.
I know, but no, I'm more referring to the Vodafone red McLaren hat.
Also, as well,
back in the day.
Question like McLaren are doing well considering their reliability because they've had a few moments. Like I still think to myself, what if Sainz didn't retire in Bahrain? What if he could have got to the end and not had the contact with Verstappen? It could be a big season for them, and I'm really happy. Personally, I said it, months ago. I think even towards the end of last season, like everyone that they brought in, I got a good vibe, and as much as I hate to say it because I rate him, now. Yeah, as much as I hate to say it, as I rate him, getting rid of Alonso was the best move, and it just same with Ferrari. When he left Ferrari, Vettel came in, different kind of approach, and it just helps, man. There's for whatever reason, like we've heard recently reports in like Toyota, like Alonso can rub people the wrong way. In WEC, so there were elements in that team as well, along with like Ron Dennis and whoever was there. They just had to go through this phase, and I've said it before. McLaren go through ups and downs. It's been the case for the last 25 years. They have, 5 good years, 5 bad years, and they go through slumps. So it's definitely like they're on the upturn. So
it's nice to see them make the move forward with Renault as well, and it's also a nice juicy battle because they're both powered by Renault. So it's
probably
even.
Might go to Mercedes, maybe. There's a rumor going around.
Well, McLaren.
Yeah, because Williams might go Renault.
Yeah, there's a rumor that they're going to go back with that partnership.
That'd be interesting.
Which could be very interesting because if they could get that extra engine power, they clearly fixed their car from last year and are on a good route now where they can actually do upgrades and actually make a difference. Like they keep banging in like 2 seconds faster lap times than last year.
I'd like to see McLaren Mercedes back.
I would as well. I mean, just
that was a good partnership.
I think because they have that Mercedes
reliability and pure really straight line speed.
Like they could really focus on
the McLaren's already good in the straight line as well. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So add on the Mercedes engine, they could potentially add more. They could do a higher downforce setup there, and therefore be even better in the corners. Because
there's no hard feelings really between McLaren and Mercedes. Bearing in mind as well, back when Mercedes were partnered with McLaren, they owned. I was reading about it the other day. They owned almost 38% of the team. When they were supplying them engines, and I think it was during the takeover when Mercedes wanted to come into Formula One, they tried to take over McLaren, but instead they took over Brawn.
Yeah, well, because McLaren were effectively
they were Mercedes.
Yeah, they were the factory Mercedes team.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like you thought McLaren, you thought Mercedes in a way. Like
it was
just the two
McLaren Mercedes
the two brands were so gel together.
Yeah, they were knitted together so well, and it'd be nice to see. I mean, a few more seasons with Renault first, just for them to get on their feet properly and be a bit further up the grid to then get a bit more points in the bag and a bit more money.
Well, I mean, for them, the ideal time would be like 2021, like this year, next year, and then new regs. That's the time to really
make that move.
Put all your eggs in that basket and try and cash in on that, and that's the big chance to take the big step up from like upper midfield to actually competing with the big boys. But I mean, for McLaren, listen, at the end of the day, it's simple math. Look at their car this year. It just looks like a good car, like compared to last year. It's full of sponsors. It looks quick. It looks aggressive. The front wing, the nose. It just looks like a race car. Last year's car, you could just tell it was like, this year it looks good. And it's performing like it should do. So
you could say they don't have to lift off as much anymore.
Yeah.
Wow, that is horrendous.
I was going to take a pun before, but
I was fully sitting there like lift. Got to make something about a lift.
Actually horrendous.
I'll see the door.
I was going to say before you said about the positive signs at McLaren.
Yeah, you did that as well unintentionally. Yeah.
I was going
So
to
that's,
bring
that's
that up,
one.
but-
That's one subconscious pun.
And okay, we've just
one
fully
conscious
we've
pun.
killed McLaren now. They're going to be at the back of the grid because we've
Back of it.
ruined them.
We've memed them down the order.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
What's happened there. That's what happened there. We look on further. Raikkonen P8, solid drive for Alfa Romeo. I mean, the Alfa Romeo car seems to be working a lot better lately. They found a few bits here and there with the setup maybe, or with upgrades.
Arav can only say nice things about Alpha now.
That's not true, actually. I don't have any
Can't
obligation.
speak about Alpha.
I don't have any obligation to say anything.
You're going to be complimenting
Right,
Giovinazzi on how well he span into that gravel trap.
Yeah, he
was
beached it really well there, so it seemed like good finesse. Good bit of traction there in that gravel.
Oh, fuck's sake. It
wanna
was a
mention-
bad, it was a bad spin.
I want to talk about Kvyat.
Yeah, I was gonna move on to that because he
had a
was really
good
chuffed
race
with
again.
himself.
Well, he started 17th and finished 9th.
Yeah.
Again, another one of them races where it got the vibe of, like, I think he got everything out of the car and he was quite happy with his performance. His team radio was very interesting after the race when he crossed the line. I don't know if you've seen the radios.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I didn't.
No.
What was it? Did he say?
I can't remember exactly, but it's along
he
the
was,
lines
he was
of,
like, oh, I can still drive.
yeah, like this car. But he's had a few races this season where he's really extracted the maximum out of it and like made a good comeback and got like a good points finish. And I think on the sly, on the down low, I think low key's had a really good season. Really.
No,
good.
I think he's having a
fully.
very solid one. In terms of also, like, I think even for him, we talk about a lot of mental stuff, but mentally for him to come back like this
Exactly.
in
Yeah,
Toro
yeah,
Rosso,
yeah.
it could have been quite daunting for him. But no, he's just took, he's done his business, been mature about it, and he's done the work, and he's having a very good season as Toro Rosso seasons go. I mean, Toro Rosso are on the I think they're level on points now with Haas, so they're going to overtake them very soon, I would say. And I think that would be very solid for them to be like third last, or however you want to look at, like, eighth place? Yeah, because
Yeah.
a lot of the time Toro Rosso do kind of slump very hard, so it'd be kind of cool to see this carry on, hopefully, basically.
It'd be nice to
I
say.
agree.
It's just I like the positive energy around Toro Rosso as well, especially with Albon. I mean, he was getting his elbows out at the start of the Grand Prix. I don't think he was helped by the safety car,
No.
which I think
He
is
had,
which is the
a
reason
bit
why
of
he
a
was out of
dodgy
the
issue,
points.
didn't he? Because apparently there was some electrical fault which stopped him from stopping, which was the original plan.
All right.
So he had to
Right.
go to the end. So basically, the car went into like a, I don't know what to call it, like maybe like a safety mode. I don't know what to call it, but basically the car was in like high voltage or something, or the engine was in overload to the point where it was a risk to bring him in because it could cause like a fire or something. So he just had to stay out and keep everything cool, because if you stopped the car or like came in or like stopped for a minute, put the car in neutral or something, apparently
Right.
it could have
Right.
tripped
Yeah,
something.
like the,
It
right.
was
So
an
like the
electrical
only
issue.
way he could stop was actually turning the entire car off, and that would
Yeah,
end
pretty
his
much.
race.
So he had to just stay out. That's why his race didn't go well. Because
I'm
he was
sure
getting-
that
Well,
filled
yeah,
him
he
with
pulled off.
confidence.
He did a one-stop soft to medium, so fair play, and still came
exactly.
12th. So
That's really good.
I'll
I
put it
bet
down and see
that.
what
I
I can
bet
find
that. I wonder what that feels like, because you think about it, they go, "Oh yeah," like you look at the car, you go, "It's got no way to discharge apart from coming into the team and blowing up his team." Pretty much as they touch the car. That'd be really scary.
now that is some 007 shit.
But how does that give? How much confidence does that give? Yes, I'm driving around with a couple of thousand volts surrounded
Yeah,
by me.
that's,
Hold on, let me just get out of the car by jumping off it.
a little bit nerve-wracking, yeah. Knowing
Yeah.
that I have to switch this car fully before doing anything or before anyone gets to it.
Very scary.
Yeah,
But
very-
yeah,
I'll bring it up now. I'm literally just bringing up the article up now. See if I can get like the exact
Right.
terminology of it. So
Racing
apparently,
point.
according to the headline, it was literally he couldn't do a second stop because it was too dangerous to do so. It was obviously some kind of issue with the car. It's really interesting. Apparently, due to a high voltage issue, which meant the car
Right.
touching the car may cause injury.
Yeah, it
even though
sounds
they've got
like that.
gloves on
It
and
sounds
stuff.
like a thing where usually when they do pull up with the issue with the ERS, it charges the car and that light goes on up at the top to say it is a charged car, and so the marshals have to get rubber gloves on to touch it. Obviously, they can't.
Yeah.
The gloves they use in pit stops aren't rubber gloves, so
You could say he has super ERS.
get the marigolds out.
yes, he did have super ERS, and he would have actually blown up like I did. Racing Point P13 was Stroll. Perez, obviously, Callum mentioned he had that issue. P17. Williams, P14 in 15. That's something. And
I mean, they
Sebastian
capitalised on
P16.
Vettel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they got Vettel. They can do the headlines. We beat a Ferrari car. And that's the
Actually,
entire
it's
grid.
worth noting. We need to hold almost a funeral to Williams, actually, because they were robbed of the only thing they were good of, and that was the fastest pit stop.
The pit
Because
stop,
Red
yeah.
Bull did a 1.91 stop.
Gasly's pit stop.
That was literally a blur.
You basically blink and you miss it. Like, did he even come in? Did he?
Surely it can't get any faster.
I don't know. Tech gets
never
faster.
know.
Humans get even better.
There's only
I mean,
so
the
much.
previous record was 1.97, wasn't it, from Williams this season? So
Yeah, but I mean, like practice pit stops are 1.8 generally, but in the high pressure environment, you never really see them. But
Yeah.
you want to do a bit.
if we see a 1.8 second pit stop,
Hey,
Mamma mia.
yeah,
major mamma
Same
mia.
idea there.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Well,
RIP
no.
Williams, they've got literally nothing. They can't even say that they're quick in the pit stops
Yeah.
either.
So there's that. So on that note, then, and I feel like every time we do a race review, we always end on a joke or like a meme of like Williams. But
Yeah, because it's usually
you can't
Williams
really-
that are last.
You can't say much else for them. I mean, Haas were last, but there's not anything to talk about because there is stuff to talk about with Rich Energy and stuff, but we're going to save that for the off-race week podcast on the weekend because there's a lot of stuff we can actually dive into with that, and there probably inevitably will be actually more that will come out in the next day or two, so it's actually going to be good for us to kind of wait around.
You
to
could
see
say that Albon's car would have given a lightning bolt.
That's 3 now. That's out.
Right, okay, now it is time. I've got to
It's now
leave
time to
now.
end.
That's
On that
silence.
note,
Okay.
it is
That's
time to
silence,
end
says
right
it.
here, right now. If you did enjoy the podcast, leave a like button. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. If you're new around here, do go subscribe to this channel for the podcast. Check us all out on Twitter.
Not
Links
cows.
on screen
Not
right
cows.
now.
Not cows. Don't
If
follow.
you do want to catch us on audio, you can on SoundCloud, Spotify, and iTunes. And obviously, if you do want to support us directly, like what we're doing around here, you can check us out on Patreon, link in the description, or check out GT Omega and use the code PitlaneF1 at checkout, and that will directly help us. But till the next one, guys, hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.